You are listening to SEC After Dark with Stephen Willis, Corey Burton, and Jeb Beecham. All right, welcome to SEC After Dark. I'm the host, Stephen Willis, alongside Corey Burton. We're going to go
Hello,
along
folks.
this magical mystery tour that mount around the SEC. We're going to talk a little expansion tonight. We're going to enjoy our beer. Land Shark here, beer here, as
My
always.
my hot takes are fueled tonight by Sweetwater IPA. You're going to get a live taste test from me tonight. This is the first time I've ever had Sweetwater IPA. I'm usually a Sweetwater 420 guy if I do the Sweetwater, and I've been known to drink Sweetwater Blue as well. I do like me some Sweetwater Blue. So, shall we?
Let's do it.
Cheers. Cheers. That's pretty good, actually. I could dig that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not normally an IPA type guy. So
Not me neither. I'm about as weak sauce as they come. I go for the wheat beers, like the Blue Moons, the Summer Ales, the Leinenkugel, those type of things. But this was left in my refrigerator, so I said, why not? Never had it.
why not?
Why not? I'll taste it on air. That'll be fun. So, in the spirit of Nate Bargatze, let's go, folks.
Yeah. Tonight's show, we're going to talk a little bit about exactly what expansion would mean. And then we're going to get into the Oklahoma and Texas story, and we're going to go back in time a little bit to 2011 when all this started. And then we're going to talk a little bit about SEC Media Days impressions. So, first of all, what expansion would mean to the SEC? Now, last week, there's no surprise to anybody that with Mark Emmert saying the NCAA should de-emphasize itself, that the conferences should take more power, somebody would step up to try and do that. And to do that, add Oklahoma, add Texas, all of a sudden you have the 8 horses of the apocalypse in the SEC, and you can really do some damage.
And then you add Clemson and Florida State, and you rule the world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be insane to add Texas and Oklahoma. I was joking with my wife earlier on the way home from practice tonight, and I joked with her saying that, now there's going to be a battle to see who the real UT is.
Yeah, and the power T at Tennessee.
Texas.
Yeah, the power T at Tennessee looks an awful lot like the T at Texas. You figure the font would be at least a little bit different.
Yeah, at least they got the color slightly different, so I guess there's that, right?
Oh, can you imagine how much of an eyesore all that orange would be?
Oh, I don't even want to
Oh,
think about that.
my
I got a headache.
goodness.
I got to take a sip on that one. I got a headache now.
It would just be like retina-inducing, like just pain. It'd be like Superman's heat vision.
You ever want to gouge your eyes out? Yeah, just go to a UT game.
Yeah, that's
See what I did there?
yeah, exactly. And Texas A&M calls them TU, by the way. That's some kind of insulting thing. They calls
Yes.
them TU, and I don't
TU,
get that
yeah.
one at all.
It's just like people, calling Southern Miss the mustard buzzards. It's just, because Texas fans, they're the University of Texas, so they get really mad about that.
The only free space out there is whenever the next round of expansion happens, Southern Miss is going to lose.
They always lose.
Yeah, they just drop down and they can drop down and they drop down. It wasn't that long ago they were winning a league right below the Power Five. Now they're teetering around the Sun Belt territory, and after this next round of expansion, they could be at the absolute bottom of the barrel.
Hey, don't make fun of the Sun Belt. The Fun Belt is outstanding.
They are. Just their markets keep getting stolen by higher divisions, higher leagues.
That is very true. But Chad Lunsford is making a case for Georgia Southern by going and moonlighting as a professional wrestler.
Really?
Yeah, they had some like local event, I think somewhere down in South Georgia, and they like brought him out there, and they like how like in wrestling they gang up on somebody, they did that. His big gimmick is like he elbow drops a steel chair in the locker room, like when they have a big win. He does like the people's elbow on a chair.
That's so
You should watch
weird.
it.
So absolutely weird. I do not understand the fascination with that.
It is Statesboro, Georgia, so keep that in mind.
That's true.
Um, it is Statesboro, Georgia. So, yeah, I mean, when you look at expansion, it's very fascinating the way the world with NIL. I think it rips every remaining tooth out of the NCAA. You're going to see conferences. It's going to be a free for all, and they're going to band together and put together some sort of tournament to see who the national champion is. But if this thing with Oklahoma and Texas gets approved, bye bye Big 12, right?
Yeah, and we'll get to our, we'll go Big 12 after dark and just talk about which teams are going to
We
fit.
better hurry because it's
Yeah,
about to be Big 12
yeah.
Denver.
Which teams are likely to go where? Who is going to be the team that is likely going to be left out? Because if you take all the teams in the Big 12, which is only 10, I know it makes a ton of sense, and you just divide them among the remaining spots in the Power Five conferences. 9
Mm-hmm.
teams have a home. 1 team gets left out.
That's probably KU, right?
No, that's probably Kansas State. Kansas basketball is going to save them.
That's true.
Especially they would probably likely end up in the Big Ten. Iowa State would likely end up in the Big Ten.
Iowa State is definitely Big Ten because they're
Hmm.
they're natural rivals with Iowa. That makes sense. I've always been a proponent of trading Nebraska for Iowa State for the Big Ten and getting that Iowa State rivalry. But yeah, Matt Campbell's a Big Ten guy. Iowa State's athletics are, they're competitive with Iowa, and I think that would be a great fit for the Big Ten.
Hmm.
Kansas and Kansas State, I think, need to go over to the Pac-12. They can be natural rivals with Colorado and kind of add some depth in Mid America markets there. I think you take the remaining teams like West Virginia, stick them in the ACC.
Hmm.
Take Pitt. No, Pitt's in the ACC. You take Oklahoma State, throw them in the Big Ten.
No, their academics aren't. I don't think they would mesh in the Big Ten. But you could take somebody. But it's the same problem with the Pac-12. So you
But
can
does
send them out because
does
they have 4
Rutgers really
spots.
though?
Yeah, there's 4 spots out in the Pac-12 to get them
Mm-hmm.
to that magic 16, and maybe that's something like Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and TCU.
Yeah, I mean, you got to take those Texas schools and send them west, and that's in that scenario. Send the Eastern teams to the ACC, and then 2 to the Big Ten, like Iowa State to the Big Ten, and
Can
probably one
I'm
of the.
I'm all proponent of Kansas.
Okay, yeah,
Mm.
whatever team fits well in the Big Ten. I think basketball wise, they fit well in the Big Ten. Send the rest out west, and send a couple to the ACC as well. The ACC is sitting at 14, I think, too. So,
I think
um,
are they? I think they're at 15. Are they not?
well, it depends on what you do with Notre Dame.
Okay, yeah, I'm counting Notre Dame in that. Okay,
Yeah, it depends on what you do with Notre Dame.
but
And if
one
I'm
thing's
if I'm the Big Ten, I contact Notre Dame and say, "Hey, come on over here, come to the
yeah,
Big Ten.
yeah,
You better."
it's just a crazy scenario because one thing's for certain: what this expansion would mean would be a transformation of college football unlike which you have ever seen. What we saw in 2011 was merely a preamble, and good for Missouri for getting their seat in the cakewalk early because it
Hmm.
might not be there, it might not have been there this time around.
No, they
And
would have gotten screwed.
you're looking at 4 divisions, roughly 16 teams, and a playoff developing off that. I expect that playoff to be also 16 teams eventually.
Hmm.
And from that, the top 4 finishers of each conference will just go into the playoff. You'll get rid of the conference championship game, and the whole season will be like a tournament.
Yeah, I mean, you treat it like high
Mm,
school. Then at that point,
mm,
you get you could even go as far as 32 teams,
mm,
and have like regional things like that. Like you could, high school could do it. I feel like college football could figure out a way to do it,
mm.
um, and then roll that way. So yeah, that would be cool, man. I think that would be great. Like you have geographical conferences. Obviously the SEC would truly be the SEC. The ACC would be kind of weird, but I mean, technically you're running all the way up the Eastern Seaboard, so
Except
technically
for no,
BC is Atlantic Coast, except for Notre Dame. That's
yeah, Notre Dame and Indiana.
Yeah, and then Syracuse.
Yeah.
Um, so if I'm the ACC, maybe I trade Notre Dame and Syracuse for like Maryland and Rutgers or something like that, and get a more regional, up the Eastern Seaboard type conference. So um, have a Gulf Division and Atlantic Division for your schools, right?
Legends and
Um,
leaders.
yeah, that worked well,
Hmm.
right? And then the Coastal and the Atlantic, that that works really well too. Because I still don't know who's in each division. I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you. Could not tell you.
Well, one thing I think when all this happens is I don't think the Longhorn Network is going to be renewed, and this is
It can't be.
coming up because it's not going to be renewed.
Yeah.
So I foresee a scenario where the SEC has two networks
Mhm.
and a streaming package over the top for both of them.
Yep.
I foresee that happening, and it could be rather interesting to essentially have the SEC West and the SEC East separated on their network, but they'll have an over the top streaming service that you can watch everything on.
Yeah. I mean, sports media is going to change tremendously as well. I mean, obviously, the Longhorn Network is going to dissolve, and I don't think it's doing all that well. So that probably is part of the reason why it's dissolving, and part of the reason why Texas is exploring. That was kind of the only thing that was keeping him in the Big 12 at this point was the Longhorn Network. But it's just not like it's just not going well. Like your number one host is Lowell Galindo.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So some weird things are happening at ESPN too. Like there's like a upheaval of talent leaving. So like the SEC network, the ACC network, some of these like sub networks within ESPN, do they break off or do they try to join Fox or CBS or some other major network and get under that umbrella? Or, like what do you like? How does that impact? Like, do you see anything like
Well,
that
yeah.
doing?
No, I don't see anything like that happen with the SEC, especially now since Disney paid 300-400 million dollars, whatever that price tag was that got the CBS rights and the ESPN
Mm-hmm.
Plus rights, and just put everything under one umbrella. I don't think any of that's going to change. I do think that is driving this expansion. I think Disney wants this to happen. Today on the show, Paul Feinbaum was talking about it like it was an inevitability. The
Yeah.
only denial that came out of any kind was from Texas A&M's Ross Bjork, and then he went on the air like 30 minutes later and walked that back with a but. And so it looks like it is pretty far down this road. Now, Oklahoma
Mm-hmm.
State put out a statement that they will aggressively defend their own interests. That's a shocker that the Oklahoma State's going to look after Oklahoma State. But they're talking about 4 votes need to have to be there. 4 negatives can block an expansion, and they're trying
Mm-hmm.
to campaign that. And they're talking about Texas A&M and Missouri. It'd be a hard no. I just don't think that will be a
Mm-mm.
hard no eventually, because once they press it and back in the boardroom, that's all going to be a yes, and it's going to be a unanimous yes. And everybody's worried about Texas and the mess that they can make once they get into the boardroom and start swinging around the fact that they're Texas. Don't realize that there's a lot of big dogs at this table. There's a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
that can tell them to sit down, and we will handle things from here.
Yeah, there is. I mean, as good as their administration is there at Texas, I mean, I think Chris Del Conte is a really good athletic director, but he's walking into a league with tremendous athletic directors from, all over the place. With Josh Brooks at Georgia doing a tremendous job. He's now a big dog. You know, guy at Ole Miss, who's the athletic director at Ole Miss?
Keith Carter.
Keith Carter.
Yeah.
I didn't know his name, but he's doing a pretty good, damn good job. I mean, he's made some good hires in all the sports, and bringing the Lane train down to Oxford. I think he's doing a good job.
He's the one that got Kermit, even though
He's the
Ross
one that
was
got
there.
Kermit in
Mm-hmm.
basketball. So I'm I think there's some big dogs here, and I think there's some big boosters. There's a lot of influence. So Texas is just gonna put their raft right in the big pond with the other rafts, and I think they'll immediately fit in. They can't walk. They know they can't walk in and push people around like they did in the Big 12. Like there's a difference between, I don't even think you look at Vandy and they're the little fish in this thing, and I think that they, just by association, they get respect too. They're the big dogs in baseball. Um, Consistently. I mean, I know Mississippi State knocked them off this year, but they're consistently really good in the sport of baseball, and they're usually competitive basketball wise. They've been really down lately, but you got some great ads in this league. You got some great administrators, school presidents, fan bases, things like that. I mean, Texas is not the number one show in town like they were in the Big 12. They will immediately know that. Oklahoma the same way. So I'm excited to have them. I guess we're on to Oklahoma and Texas now, but I'm excited to have them. I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be good. I think it'll be good competition for the league. I think it'll make things interesting. It'll truly make this the most difficult league in the country. If it already wasn't, it's going to get even more difficult. I think shaking up the divisions could be really beneficial. I think Bama walks into the East with Auburn. Then you shift Missouri over to the West, and then add Texas and Oklahoma, and I think you get a true West and a true East. I think Alabama Auburn being in the East would be awesome, and then you just kind of have to figure out schedule wise how you're going to do it, as far as crossover games and stuff like that. But you take your top. You take your top two from each division, stick them in the 16-team tournament. Hey,
Yeah.
the English language has escaped me for a moment, but I think there's a lot of great ideas as far as that goes. I think you can band a couple of these group of five conferences together. Like you could probably put the Sun Belt and Conference USA together, the American, and then the Mountain West, and just let those teams roll, and like the top four, out of those leagues, get a seat in the tournament. So,
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it. And if you look at basically the geographic setup and the rivalry setup of a potential Oklahoma and Texas with Alabama and Auburn moving east, it actually fixes a lot of problems that we had with the rivals and had for years. I mean, you've got Auburn and Georgia in the same division. They're no longer across division. That you also have the Alabama and the Iron Bowl is protected. Alabama and Tennessee is protected. That used to be a cross division game. Auburn gets Florida back. The big ones would be like Mississippi State versus Alabama. That rivalry, they've played 100 times, but nobody is going to miss that rivalry. And Ole Miss is going to lose Vanderbilt. And it might be a situation.
You can't lose Vanderbilt.
Yeah. And they can't lose to Vanderbilt. There's a difference there.
There's a big difference.
Yeah. And
big difference.
you
Cheers to
get
that.
7 conference games and maybe 2 cross division games, and with no permanent opponents, because permanent opponents would not be necessary any longer.
No, it wouldn't be, and it'd be fun. You reinstate the A&M Texas rivalry. You preserve the Red River Shootout. You preserve the Deep South's oldest rivalry, Iron Bowl. Battle of the Oak and Barrel doesn't get affected. You still get Ole Miss LSU. You still get Arkansas LSU, Missouri Oklahoma. I don't know if there was any rivalry there, but there could be now. And so I think it gets interesting, right? And you sent a text to me earlier today. Poor Vandy, they get screwed.
Yeah.
But they're going to step it up, I guess. Step it up.
They're going to have to. And Oklahoma and Texas coming over. I'm not one of these people that just assume that because they come to the all-powerful SEC, they're going to be a 3-loss team after being a playoff team in the past. It doesn't work. Yeah, that doesn't work that way.
Good.
This isn't some kind of mystical brand of football that we play in the SEC,
No.
and they're going to end up. They're going to recruit the same type players to win that everybody else does. So
nothing, Steve, nothing changes in recruiting. With these things, Oklahoma's always going to recruit the state of Texas, no matter if they're in the Pac-12, Big Ten, Sun Belt, whatever. They're always going to recruit the state of Texas well. They're always going to recruit their home state well. Texas nothing changes in Texas. They're always competing with A&M, no matter what conference they're in. They're competing with A&M. Texas is a brand. They recruit based on their brand, not their conference. They've been down for a little while, but I think they made the right hire in Sarkisian. I think Sarkisian's finally got his what together. But they're still A&M and Texas are still the big dogs in Texas. That's never going to change. Now they're in the same league, so it's going to make things interesting on the field. You reinstate that rivalry, things are going to heat up between those two. Recruiting's not going to trail off. So to think these two teams are going to immediately come in and go over in the conferences, if you're listening to somebody that has that opinion, you might want to change the person you're listening to, right? Because they recruit, they have scholarship players too. They have 85 of them. Oklahoma, albeit they've gotten curb stomped in the playoffs most of the time they've been there, they're still good. They're still a playoff team. So, and Lincoln Riley is a quality coach, and he's got a quality coaching staff. Sarkisian is a quality coach. They've got a quality coaching staff now. So they're going to be viable. Get ready. And it's okay. I'm here for it. All right. I don't want Georgia winning a weak league if they win the league. And if I'm a fan of any school that's competing, I don't want to win. I want to be in a strong league because that means my brand is strong. That only boosts recruiting for schools like Arkansas, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Kentucky, Ole Miss. That builds their brand because now Texas and Oklahoma come over. You're always competing for the same kids, but now your brand is stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. And the SEC West would be the three schools that can be upset potentially about this in some way. What I'll understand the argument on is Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and LSU. Now, I think they will be fine, but the other members of the pre-1992 SEC is sitting in the other division. So you would play those guys less often. But going to Norman, going to Austin, going to College Station, going to Baton Rouge, there's some places to go see. There's some dudes to play against. It will be pretty fun if it happens.
Yeah, no doubt. And if I'm upset about playing members of the conference pre-1992, I guess they're the same people that are mad that Georgia Tech left. So,
those people exist. Every now and then I come across somebody, now not so much now because it was back in the 50s, but are genuinely upset that Tulane left.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I see that. Swanee too. I'm sure you get somebody with Swanee. They left.
Well, no, I'm not quite that old.
Come on, Steve.
I'm not quite that
you
old.
set one up on a tee for me. I about slam dunked it. I know you're gonna take a sip of your land shark there, but I like the way the divisions shake out. I think it's interesting. I know Georgia fans are like, oh man, we just can't get away from Bama, but bring them on. Shit, bring them on. Who cares? Let's beat them.
Yeah, I mean that's all you can do, right?
We have to beat them at some point, so why not just put them in our division and let's go. Let's play them every year, right? Then I can have, then Jake Thomas can be a fixture on my show, on my Believe in Georgia Dogs show. He can be.
Yeah.
I listened to the Best of the West, by the way.
What'd you think?
That was pretty good. They, they talked a lot about quarterbacks and a lot about, what was going on there. And Kevin Bohannon and Jake Thomas, they do a really, really good job. So I'm looking forward to hearing them more. I think as they get to know each other better, I think their chemistry can only improve. So they did a really good job. To answer their question, they talked about how Brian Harson's going to recruit the South. I got two names: Mike Bobo, Derek Mason. That's how they're going to recruit the South.
Okay.
Harson made some great hires for recruiting because he hired a bunch of Southeastern guys to help him with that. So I think recruiting is going to be fine at Auburn and maybe even get better. So to answer their question on that, Mike Bobo's an ace in the hole.
Yeah, each coach that comes into the SEC has their come to Jesus moment, so to speak, with the shock value of actually participating in the daily wear and tear of recruiting. Brian Harsin is probably going to go through that at least once. But once he figures it out, just like every coach, he's going to figure it out.
But he's got some guys that have recruited in this league that'll help that transition not be as long as others. So,
Yeah.
that's why hiring like he's not hiring Mike Bobo to be. He's not hiring Mike Bobo to take over the offense. He's hiring Mike Bobo to help him with the offense and to be his recruiting ace. That's why you hire him because Bobo brings some good things to counterbalance what Harsin does, but the recruiting piece of it is really where kind of Bobo fits in. That's his best attribute right now.
All right, so we've talked about Oklahoma and Texas and all the expansion stuff, and that's going to progress over the next couple of months. Let's take the last little bit of this show and talk about SEC Media Days. Clark Lee was pretty impressive, man.
I did. I thought so. I thought he had a lot of poise, said all the right things. I was talking to him on Beast of the East, and Craig was kind of like, man, it's Vandy, but I mean, this guy gets it, man. I'm impressed with Clark Lee, and I think that he's not going to have a ton of talent there, but he does have a quarterback, Kid Seals. His father liked one of my tweets, so that's good. I'm a big Ken Seals fan. If you follow me on Twitter, I'm a big Ken Seals fan. I think he's a great quarterback. I think that's going to be the difference maker when you're looking at Vandy and South Carolina. Talent-wise, yeah, they're the bottom of the barrel in the East right now just because their rosters are so depleted. But, I think Clark Lee is going to be able to recruit well for Vandy. Now, obviously, he's not going to be able to recruit on par with Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Ole Miss, those bunches. But he's going to recruit well for Vandy. He's going to develop a nasty style of defense, and they're going to have an identity on offense, which that's like the first step in the right direction. If you have an identity and something that you do, that's going to be tough, right? They're not going to win a ton of games. It's not going to the win-loss column is not how you're going to judge Vandy, but I think they're going to be one of those teams where you're like, thank God this game's over.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing that because they are doing a lot of the things that need to be done at a place like Vandy. They want to lead. They just don't want to be a member of the smart kid caucus. They want to lead it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's important because you can be influenced and you can think it's like, oh, they did this at Northwestern, this will work here. No, the SEC is a different animal than Northwestern. The SEC is a different animal than Stanford, as Derek Mason saw. Good coach, great scheme. It's just a different thing. And you need to lead that caucus and not follow and do something that somebody else did. Because where they hit a home run earlier in the 2010s or whatever is by the hire of James Franklin. It was an offensive system. It was the Ralph Friedgen system. They found a niche they could recruit to. They were tough as hell. They found an explosive play generator in Bob Shoop on defense who would make a big play every now and then. They weren't true run stoppers. They weren't suffocating defense, but they were big playmakers. And then you get a quarterback, and all of a sudden you win 9 games 2 years in a row.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they just, like I said, they found what they did well, and they did it. I mean, let's look at the NBA example. The Milwaukee Bucks just won I would say the national championship. Mm-hmm. They just won the NBA championship, right?
Right.
They're kind of that situation where they have obviously they have a superstar, but he wasn't a superstar when they first got him. They had to build him. They had to build through the draft. Obviously it's pro sports, but they found an identity. They found what they're good at, and they played to that. And they just made sure they were the best at doing what they do, which is pound the rock, shoot the occasional three, and really just kind of run the game through Giannis and then play defense. And have Drew Holiday as the defensive stopper, give the other superstar nightmares in the 7-game series. They had their identity. They played to it very, very well. It wasn't always successful for them, but they just kept going with it. They were patient. They didn't get rid of Giannis. They developed Middleton. They developed Holiday. They brought on Brook Lopez, and they upped his game, and now they're champions. I'm not saying Vandy's going to be a national championship team, but they can be a successful football program in the SEC if they follow that same kind of formula. Find their identity, find what they're good at, find what they want to be good at, and just do it. Just be good at that. and then they can be viable in the East. They can be very, very tough. They can get back to those James Franklin days, and I think they can. I think Clark Lee is the same type of coach as James Franklin. Obviously, the defensive version of James Franklin, but I think he's going to have the same relentless effort that it takes to make a team like Vanderbilt good.
Yeah, it, just a great coach, great. Just you have to wonder if the personnel, if it's going to take too long, if the grind's going to wear him down. There's
Just
other
not.
things at Vandy that you have to worry about,
Yeah, and
but he
I
has a
think
good
he's a
plan.
Vandy guy. He understands that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a
So,
Vandy guy. He played there.
how did you think Kirby did?
Thought he did well. I thought he did well. I thought he was very. I thought the stuff that he talked about outside of the game really painted Georgia in a good light. The foundation stuff they had with the social injustice thing, the Dogs for Pups foundation that they created. It was all about action and not words, and he made that a point. They're above the threshold and continue to climb on the vaccination stuff. Talked about Ron Corson and leading the SEC medical task force. I thought he did really well. I thought he answered every question is about as good as you could answer it. I thought he addressed everything. He had a little bit of humor, and I think he did well. He's comfortable. I mean, he gets it right. So
Right.
I thought he did really well. I thought Lane Kiffin on your
Mm-hmm.
end. I thought he killed it. I was impressed with Shane Beamer. I don't know how that's going to translate into his coaching success, but I thought he killed it in the media days. I heard I didn't hear Josh Heupel's session, but I heard that the stuff that he did when he was not on the mic really gave him a lot of credit on his media day performance, like just getting to know people and just working the room and stuff like that. Like not every coach does that, but I'm impressed with the coaching depth that we have in this league. I'm not one of those that I kind of looked at all the coaches and was like, I'm not sure if there was anybody who did poorly, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Um,
Dan Mullen actually broke out that he wasn't going to put a square peg in a round hole, proving
mhm.
that he actually listens to the show and takes our
He does.
advice on a daily
He does.
basis. I mean,
Shout out to Dan Mullen.
the reach of SEC out after dark is just growing
Darth,
and growing and growing.
Darth Mullen, right there.
Yeah,
Um, I think if you really, I mean, I even thought Coach O did okay, um, but I would definitely say that he was probably uh, number 14 on the list. But I think they all did well. Coach O, I don't know. I don't know what's going on down there at LSU. It's weird, you know. It's weird that he has a national championship. First of all, I know you're weirded out by that.
well, it's Larry Coker. I mean, I'm fine
Yeah,
with it. Yeah.
yeah. Did you take your shirt off in celebration?
Man, story time for everybody. Story time, Coach O story time. Whenever I was the video coordinator at Ole Miss, part of what was required is a dog pile every now and then. They would carry around a football, and if it hit the ground, everybody would go pile up on it, and it legitimately looked like South Park. From they took our jobs. That episode of what's going on, and they threw a ball in the middle of the field in the middle of the team room, and me and the other video guy was just sitting in the back watching the show as it was going on. And I was like, wow, this is utterly ridiculous. I can't believe they're doing this. Then all of a sudden you just hear a booming voice yelling out. It's like, stop, stop, stop. And then he just, Coach O starts yelling at me because I didn't take my shirt off and participate in the dog pile, and just proceeded to spend 10 minutes like yelling because the video guys didn't have their shirt off for this team room fake fumble drill that everybody was piled up on. They're not getting up and going back to their seats. They're just having to sit there in a pile while we're getting dressed down for not participating. It is utterly ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever been through.
God, I remember you telling me the story originally.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being the guy on the bottom of that pile?
Yeah, the fact that they just didn't get up and they just had to stop and wait while they were piled up like a mound while this guy yelled at me for being an adult man that didn't want to take his shirt off and hoop and holler.
How
But
dare you?
yeah, there's some weird stuff, like the stuff of Coach O talking about he could whoop anybody's butt that was in here in the introductory meeting, um, and there's a lot of stuff also where he just like rips his shirt off like Hulk Hogan back in the day. I mean, it was bizarre, man. It was really bizarre.
I mean, he's running around LSU's campus shirtless now, just getting his exercise in. So it's crazy, man. Like he moves one state over, and dude fits like a
Hmm.
glove. You know, he's like he's
That's
going
his
to be
people.
governor of Louisiana before too long.
Yeah, that's his people. I mean, it's you can get away with stuff whenever you don't act out of the ordinary. He did not fit at Ole Miss at all. Absolutely did not fit at all. Lane Kiffin fits like a glove. Ed Orgeron just did not fit. You talk about square peg round hole. It was like, hey, we can get out of this from recruiting. Let's give this guy an opportunity. And then when he got there, just disaster after disaster happened.
Yeah, and it's not a good fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. There's a lot of those at Tennessee too. Like there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of like, who the hell is this guy? Like Butch Jones. I mean, yeah, he's a good Group of Five coach. They hired him. They could justify it. Oh, he was winning 10 games at Cincinnati and Central Michigan, and he was doing well down there. And then he comes down, and he's just a cliche machine. Like one of those. Like he was a walking fortune cookie.
You think they'd be okay with Phil Fulmer back in 2004 again instead of starting this coaching turnover thing that's just got them basically irrelevant?
I think Phil Fulmer would have eventually topped out, but I don't know. Like I kind of think if they held on to Lane, he kind of would have figured it out. Like if for somehow USC didn't come calling and that didn't happen, um, I think they really screwed up hiring right after Lane Kiffin.
Mm.
That's where they screwed up. I can't. It was so long ago. I can't remember exactly who was available and who they probably could have had. But man, it was they got it wrong like three times with Dooley, Butch, and Pruitt, and man, it's terrible. I think they finally got it right with Heupel, so
Hmm.
that's the good news for them. I'm a big fan of Heupel. I can't be any longer because he's Tennessee, but I think he'll do well there.
The Tennessee Georgia game is usually kind of fun.
It is, and
Mm.
it's usually in early October, and now it's in November.
Yeah.
That's weird.
If Oklahoma and Texas comes back to the SEC, I've already got the tweet sent and everything that the LSU Ole Miss game needs to go back to Halloween if Alabama is not going to be, if they're going over to the East, if that happens, that game needs to go back to Halloween and go back to where it belongs because they've done some moving around of that game to where it was for a while it was right before the state game, and now they're trying to put every other year in October. It's weird.
Yeah, Georgia Auburn needs to be second weekend in November. That's where that game belongs. Tennessee needs to be early October. That's where that game belongs. Obviously, Georgia, Florida, they won't move that off of Halloween, which is good. That's where that game belongs. Then every other game you can move around wherever you want. Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. But don't mess with those three games.
Yeah, because there's certain games that just mean something when they're played, and I think Ole Miss and LSU it actually means something that game should be around Halloween. The two games on Halloween should be the cocktail party. I don't know if we can call it that now.
I don't care. I'm calling that, so go for it.
Yeah, and the Ole Miss LSU game that should be on Halloween, but because of the bye week in the first week in November is the LSU Alabama game, they don't want Alabama to have a bye week and them not, and this Ole Miss game can never go back there.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah,
That would be a cool Halloween like night game.
yeah, yeah. When I was growing up as a kid, on the radio you'd listen. It was like they'd play Purple People Eaters and they'd play all Halloween themed music about that game, and there were songs about that game, and it was really cool.
Hmm.
Speaking of which, just a little public service announcement to everybody. There's no Palmcast tomorrow. taking the place at 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central, will be a 20-minute LSU preview video. Matt Anderson came by and talked about all manner of LSU football, talked a little bit about the league. He works down at one team,
20 minutes of the dancing baby from the original YouTube video.
Yeah, might as well have been, but it was a good interview. A lot of good LSU football knowledge. Let's go back. Let's go back to SEC media days a little bit. We talked about Dan Mullen, Lane Kiffin. I'm gonna give you my impression of Lane Kiffin, and you tell me how far off base I am. It's about getting the brand out on the SEC network to potential recruits. And he mentioned NIL in a very cool way about Bryce Young. He said of it. It was a giant recruiting commercial for Ole Miss. And it's like I said today, I think Kiffin just dominated day 2 of media days.
Yeah, I do too. And I think he did a really good job. Day 2 was Kirby and Lane. I think it was an extremely strong day. And, I know you and I are Ole Miss and Georgia guys and peeled the curtain back on like the education that's going to go on behind it. He talked about a text exchange he had with Quavo. So for those of you who don't know who Quavo is, he was texting back and forth with Kirby Smart, and he said, make sure that your guys aren't thirsty. Meaning because, you could get burned in this whole NIL deal too by getting with the wrong people. And so you got to be careful. So there's a whole educational piece behind that. He said some of his guys, I'm sure he'll get a deal because he's Jordan Davis, but he's not like all bent out of shape about it.
Yeah, and it to your point, it is going to be a major thing. People are just trying to figure out what's going on with this name, image, and likeness stuff, and that could be good, that could be bad, but until we can get our arms around it, we're just going to have to let it go until it reaches its end, which will probably be 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, you're just going to see there's going to be some experimentation these first few years until they get it right, until they figure out a situation, until they figure out how it's going to look. You're going to see some guys get burned. You're going to see some other sport athletes that get screwed. That's just going to be part of it. There's always going to be good with bad. And so when you look at it as a whole, I think it's going to be I think it could be a positive thing. But then again, you got to also, it's just there's a lot of factors that go into it, and you just got to kind of take it for what it is. But, I thought Lane Kiffin did a really good job on his piece with it. I thought Kirby did a really good job with his piece on it. I think some of the players that they've talked to have done a really good job talking about it. And I think they've I think why they've done a good job is they've kind of busted some of the myths of it. And like those Cavender twins out at Fresno State, they busted some of the myth that like women's basketball and like female athletes are going to get screwed with this. They got to deal with Boost Mobile, like through social media, and they're like big TikTok stars. So they have a presence and they got compensated for it. So that's good to see that it's not just the top 1% of football players.
Yeah, so. I think the way this is going to show out eventually, whenever everything settles down, is going to be appearance fees and low-level boosters. Like, I don't know if there's an equivalent of it. There's a store in Oxford. Yeah, there's a store in Oxford. There maybe appearances are going to be brought in, but a local booster. But it's not going to be even the mid-level booster doing this, because like Bo Nix signed with Milo's Sweet Tea, Well, they quickly found out, Milo's did, that because of the outrage that they had to go sign an Alabama player as well. Because you can't
because they're about to get half the state boycotting them.
and they were able to do that. So what they thought was going to be, I don't know how much it was, but say a $50,000 name, image, and likeness deal just became $100,000. Just instantly, just because maybe you weren't thinking about how this was going to be perceived and how honestly crazy people are.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't take into account that, hey, we're in the SEC. There's some pretty there's some pretty crazy people here. So, companies are going to learn too. They're going to learn who to get with and who not to, and where to go and how to do it. And everyone's just learning what to do. And the
Mm-hmm.
NCAA is sitting back going, everybody's packing up their offices because they're about to be disbanded. But um, it's just a whole learning experience, which is a good thing. It's change, it's progressiveness, it's getting these guys in a $1 billion industry who get relatively nothing, and to the person who says, "Well, they get a scholarship, they get their education," that's not enough. Let's be honest about that. That's not enough at this juncture. In the in the 80s and 90s and before, it was more than enough, but it wasn't a $1 billion business as it is now.
Yeah.
They're getting like there's all kind of demands that are placed on these guys that weren't with previous generations. So it's kind of like apples and oranges, right? And it's a shift in think. Like you got to get compensated for that, right? You work hard, you put your body on the line, and I'm not saying pay these guys millions and millions of dollars, but compensate them fairly because you know you're you're representing a brand, and that brand is making you know 8 9 digit salaries, athletic departments. So the TV deal alone could help. The TV deal alone could help these SEC schools pay some of their other athletes, right? What are they doing with that money?
Yeah. Well, one thing I was thinking about the other day was about this name, image, and likeness thing, and how now you're in a position where you may not see players go out early unless they are a surefire first round pick.
They don't. They won't have to. Like
They
they won't
won't
have to
have
chase
to.
the money.
Yeah,
They're going to
you
be
can.
comfortable.
Yeah, and you can stay and get your degree and do all that you need to do because you're not. You don't have to chase that money.
And there's going to
Yeah,
be companies that give bonuses for finishing your degree too.
yeah, and also like baseball, which is essentially a 3 year program because of the
Mm-hmm.
draft.
Yeah.
So any player that plays in the SEC, they want to be a 3 year player. Well, now you might be able to be a 4 year player because if you are in the 10th round or below and your signing bonus isn't what it needs to be because that'll need to be raised up, you can stay another year in school. Your signing bonus for your senior year will be shit anyway. But this one wasn't very good either. So go find a way to make a little money on the side because at a
Mm-hmm.
place like Ole Miss, at a place like Georgia, a baseball player might be able to make a little bit of money.
Yeah, I mean, Vandy, that's a big
Mm-hmm.
sell. South Carolina, that's a big sell. Arkansas, that's a big sell. Ole Miss, that's a big sell. Basketball, Kentucky, that's a big sell. You know, keeping these one like I think it'll help basketball and some of these one and dones. Like obviously there's going to be guys that are just one and done and that's it because they're going to be superstars and they're just literally fulfilling a rule that's in
Mm-hmm.
place, which is an
It's
asinine
stupid.
rule.
Yeah, stupid rule.
Just completely stupid rule, and it ruined the NBA for years. I think the NBA is finally recovering, but it ruined the NBA for years. Um, you're going to have fringe guys like late first rounders going, maybe I could stay and get into the lottery range and make a few extra dollars, and stay in college. Like there's going to be some incentive now to stay because you're making money or you have a chance to. Like you go to a speaking engagement or you work at a car dealership, you know, or whatever.
Yeah, and that guy that's going to be, like going back to football, a guy that's going to be a fourth round draft pick, now he's going to be financially able to come back for
Mm-hmm.
that senior year and try and even boost that up even further as opposed to signing just out of desperation this year. And also with the XFL and the USFL, there's a pathway beyond the original 1 or 2% that was going pro before all this
Mm-hmm.
happened.
And I hope the USFL can take footing as long as you keep Donald Trump out of it,
Yeah.
because he ruined the league. But um, I think the USFL was. I mean, I know you were watching. I'm probably a little too young to have
Mm-hmm.
seen it when it was happening. I mean, I know about the USFL and I know the story behind it. ESPN Films did a really good job of putting that documentary together. So
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Small Potatoes, if you're
yeah,
interested in watching it.
hmm yeah, great documentary. And I hope that league can take footing because I think it could be an exciting way to bring football year round, and it could give some of these guys a chance.
Hmm.
Like it could give quarterbacks number 33 through infinity a chance to lead a team. You know, like some of these backups in the NFL could go jump to the USFL.
Yeah, absolutely. Like somebody like Chad Kelly, who for some
There's
reason,
money to
for
be had.
whatever reason, just have not made it in the NFL. Now you can go to the lower league like the USFL or the XFL, and you can put a good season together and get invited to a camp and get to go through all that because these things are going to be in the spring. These like the XFL and the USFL are going to be in the spring, so you have time to do that. Have a big year until June 15th, and then go on for camp. I mean, it's year-round football for you, but it's a chance for you to make it.
Yeah, and to be honest, there's nothing to say that even in the mid '80s that the USFL couldn't have competed with the NFL and been its own separate entity where guys are choosing. I mean, that was a thing. Like there were some
Mm-hmm.
pretty big name people, mainly quarterbacks, especially that chose USFL.
Mm-hmm.
Herschel Walker chose USFL. He signed.
Well,
He,
yeah.
yeah,
That one was a little bit more complicated, but
yeah.
yeah,
But
they were
nonetheless,
actually trying to get Anthony Carter playing for the Michigan Panthers,
mhm.
Bobby Abear playing for the Michigan Panthers.
Steve
Uh,
Young, Jim Kelly,
uh, yeah,
uh,
Mike
Warren
Rozier.
Moon, huh? Yeah, Mike Rozier.
Yeah, Sam Mills. Basically, that whole defense for the Philadelphia Stars under Jim Mora went to the New Orleans Saints and became the Dome Patrol way back in the mid 80s, if everybody
Hmm.
remembers the Dome Patrol.
Yeah, but I think had Trump not bankrupted the league and just drove it into the ground, I think that league was gaining traction. That league was becoming very competitive with the NFL, and
Yeah,
the
and
NFL is
John Bassett dying didn't
mhm.
help at all either as well.
No, it didn't. But I think it has a chance. Like it has some name recognition. I hope it does well. I mean, obviously the NFL is going to be really tough to unseed and but I mean you can gain enough traction to be a viable spring league. That's for sure.
Hmm. You absolutely can. And I'm just going to say I'm a lifelong Tampa Bay Bandits fan. I'm hoping the Tampa Bay Bandits come back. I want to go over to Raymond James Stadium in the spring and watch a football game in mid-May. It should be a lot of fun.
Do they hire
But
Spurrier again?
they might. Who knows?
They get extremely young Spurrier, and then they turn around and get extremely old Spurrier.
Yeah. Oh, also, before we get out of here, I do want to say because he's one of my favorites of all time. Bobby Bowden was diagnosed with a terminal disease today, and I'm terribly sorry about that.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
Florida State in the '90s, you cannot be a football fan and not enjoy what they did in the '90s, and that rivalry with Florida and Steve Spurrier together, the Free Seas University, and all of that going back and forth just made college football really entertaining. And I
Hmm.
hate that for Bobby, but thank you so much for doing what you did and putting the teams together that you put together because
Hmm.
you don't know about it, but you definitely influenced a small town kid from South Mississippi.
You influenced a big town kid from Atlanta. Even though my dad didn't play for him, he played pre Bowden at Florida State. But Coach Bowden actually, when my dad was battling cancer, Coach Bowden called my dad
Hmm.
because he knew he was a Letterman, a former Letterman. So he called him, wished him well. They had a conversation. So to think, Bowden was there, I think for one season when my dad was there as an assistant before he moved on to wherever he went before he came back as head coach. But I mean, that guy just changed a lot of things with college football, and there wouldn't be a Florida State in the '90s if he hadn't came on with the mantra "We'll play anybody anywhere" in the early '80s. Like there was no game he was afraid of. He would load them up and play them. He was innovative when he was coaching. He did things. he did things his way. He was kind of that first guy of like he would give guys chances, second chances, and mentor them and make sure he ushered them and kept them out of trouble. FCA wouldn't be a thing, I think, without Bobby Bowden spearheading that. There's a lot of things that he's responsible for, and then just the really fun rivalry with Florida and with Steve Spurrier. I think ultimately those two had the utmost respect for each other, but they made it fun. Steve Spurrier is not shy to throw a few jabs, but it was all in good fun. But Bobby, I hate to hear that news, and it's terminal. So, I guess get well soon doesn't really apply here. But I hope I hope he can somehow find a way to beat this thing. But you know, he's accomplished a lot, and I appreciate that. And Florida State will always, for many reasons, but will always have a special place with me and my family. So, hats off to Bobby Bowden.
Yeah, there's a story like in 1998 where there was a brawl before the Florida State game, and Doug Johnson actually threw a football at Bobby Bowden and actually didn't get punished for it. And a reporter asked him, "It's like Doug Johnson didn't get punished for throwing a football. Can you imagine if your quarterback? What would happen if your quarterback threw a football at Steve Spurrier?" And Bobby Bowden said, "Well, my quarterback would have hit him." And just those jabs back and forth. It was just such a fun rivalry. Even so, even if you take into account, I didn't even bring up the wide right bowls and going back and forth with Miami because you had that fun happening at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely, and that whole thing with all the coaches down at Miami. I think the rivalry they had with Jimmy Johnson in the late '80s. I think that was a lot of fun. Dion, Michael Irvin, Jimmy Johnson, Bobby Bowden. Those games were always a lot of fun. Florida State being able to get on the better end of that later on. That national championship game was about as crazy as it gets. They douse them with the Gatorade, and then the referees are like, "Hold up, this game ain't over yet." And they missed a 50-yard field goal. Nebraska did to seal that game for Florida State, but to win the games that they won, to have the rivalries that they had, to have for Bobby to have had the impact and influence of so many coaches and so many players in football, and in FCA, and all his walk with religion, and I know that was extremely controversial too, with a lot of people. But I think just the impact that he had amongst a lot of people it's felt, right. And I think it's he's been great for college football, and I think that he was done wrong at the end of his tenure at Florida State, being pushed out. He deserved the right to go out whenever the hell he wanted to. Hell, he could have still been coaching there, and I would have been okay with it because he's Bobby Bowden, and you don't have Florida State football without Bobby Bowden. Like, he is Florida State football.
He basically invented the spread offense in 93 or 94 whenever he decided that Charlie Ward could only function out of the shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
And that offense, I mean, he ended up winning a Heisman that year off of what was happening, but that basically would have morphed into the spread offense.
Yeah, I mean, it was the brainchild of him and Mark Richt, which was kind of like it was kind of another like subset. It was like the fast break West Coast offense is kind of what it was. It was the spread fast break West Coast, because you had the air raid with BYU in the mid '80s, right? And that's kind of where the air raid was born, because Mike Leach was around,
Edwards,
and with Lavelle Edwards, that's kind of where that was born. And then Mike Leach kind of twisted and turned it and formed it and got his own thing going. But that didn't take footing until after Bobby got going in '93 with Florida State. Some of it was influenced by Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly and Mark Richt were roommates down at Miami. So the fast, he would talk with Jim. And so they kind of, Buffalo was kind of doing the fast break thing in the NFL. Florida State, kind of took it, tweaked it, made it work for them. National champions.
Yep. All right, let's get out of here real quick. I want to thank everybody for listening or watching. For
Watching and
Corey,
listening.
yeah, for Corey, I'm Steve. Thank you very much, and of course, hotty toddy.
Go dogs. Cheers.